I think the most important development, not just in the US, but the global economy, has been the slowdown of productivity growth. Productivity in the United States was growing at about 2.5% a year. Now it's growing at about 1% a year. That has a big impact on our overall economic growth, on the incomes that households have. It slows them, and it compounds our fiscal problems. I think partly the productivity slowdown was caused by the recession, and the recession led businesses to pull back on their investment, and with less investment, you get less productivity. That I expect to unwind and reverse itself over time, but there's also been a slowdown in the pace of innovation, which is amazing. I mean, we see all these amazing things happening in the economy, but they're still only in a fraction of the economy, and for most of the economy, you're not seeing the pace of innovation you used to, and I think changing that should be one of the top priorities for public policy going forward. I think it's one of the increasingly talked about problems in the US economy, but still isn't as widely appreciated as it should be. In the 1950s, 98% of men were in the labor force, prime age men were in the labor force. Now it's down to 88%. So there's been over many decades a withdrawal from the labor force. That doesn't just hurt our aggregate economy, but it takes these men, and these are men primarily with a high school degree or less, and really excludes them from the economy and from society in a way that I think has broader ramifications. Women have been, over the last 15 years, also following a similar pattern of declining labor force participation. Some of the causes for the two are similar, some are different. So for women, the lack of paid leave plays a bigger role, and child care subsidies plays a bigger role than it does for men, for example. But I think fixing this, or at least starting to fix this, is really, really important, not just for our economy, where we're going to have demographic pressures, and if more people, higher fraction of people worked, we could overcome some of those demographic pressures, but not just for our economy, but really for our society. I think there's a risk that technology could replace jobs, but remember, that's been happening for a long time. 90% of what humans could do in the year 1900 can now be done by machines, and yet lots of humans still have jobs because we're richer and we create new jobs and do new types of things. I think to blame technology too much is to let policymakers off the hook. I think we make policy choices that shape how technology affects our economy. And with one set of choices, technology might replace jobs, but if we invest more in education, in training, in helping people find jobs, then there's no reason that the technology should have a really big effect of replacing jobs. Yeah, I mean, the United States has a higher level of inequality than most of the other advanced economies. It's also risen more quickly, and that to some degree is proof that technology may have played a role, trade may have played a role, but Sweden has a lot more trade than the United States has. Sweden has had roughly the same technological developments that the United States has, but it doesn't have the same amount of inequality. So the inequality in the United States, it's been growing, yeah, and it's been growing a lot in Sweden. But I think that shows you that a lot of inequality, though, reflects policy choices. Do you have labor unions? Do you have a minimum wage? Do you have tax policies that are more progressive, and a whole set of policy levers that the government has? In the United States, I think clearly we're at the point where we have too much inequality, where that inequality cannot be justified by its contribution to stronger growth, and in fact, it may in some ways be detracting from our economic growth. I don't think that the administration's agenda would help a lot in any of our major economic challenges, and would be counterproductive in a number of cases. For stronger productivity growth, we both need expanded trade with the rest of the world and talented immigrants coming to our country. I think we're going to have less of both of those. For labor force participation, you need training programs and support for education. That's being cut by this administration. And then finally, the tax changes proposed by this administration are disproportionately tax rate reductions for high-income households, and that would exacerbate inequality.